Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. I'm your host, Daniel J. Today, we're talking Bryan Kohberger and the defense we most likely probably could expect to see. Now, this is a 100% complete theory episode based on evidence, conversations, and interviews that we've been able to put together what we think is probably going to be that defense. Now, this is part two of a two-part series, so I recommend watching part one. Now, you don't necessarily need to watch part one to watch part two, as there are two sides of a coin. Part one is the prosecution theory that we have and the evidence and the direction that we think that the prosecution is aiming towards convicting Bryan Kohberger. Part two is the most likely defense that we think they're going to come back with. And so, like I said, you don't necessarily need to watch part one for part two, but I do recommend watching both. What we're going to talk about first and foremost is going to be separated in two parts in this episode. First part, we're going to be talking about the evidence and how the defense is probably going to attack that evidence, what we should expect to see in that. And then the second half of this show, we're going to talk about, the biggest defense that a defense could have is pointing in the direction of somebody else. We're going to talk about who we think that person is and what that defense will more than likely look at. But before we start, we do want to say that we do think that Bryan Kohberger is guilty of this crime. We do think that he'll be found guilty of this crime, and we think that there's still evidence out there that has not yet been brought to light. For instance, the results of the vehicle search. Is there DNA? Is there blood on the foot pedal, on the carpet, on the seats, on the headrest, anywhere in that car that belonged to one of the victims? If so, I think that's the nail in the coffin. Boom. It's over. It's done. He's guilty of sin. Right? Now, we aren't aware of that information yet, so we're not going to use that for the prosecution nor for the defense based on our theories. So I'm not going to go and use that for or against anybody. It's going to be as if that evidence doesn't exist. Okay? So without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing, in my opinion, when it comes to this case, or the biggest piece of evidence that's out there, is the DNA evidence. There's been the obvious explanation: somebody stole it, he lost it, he left it. But is that even possible? A lot of people talk about Bryan Kohberger as being this guy who is an incel, doesn't go out anywhere, to himself, whole 9 yards, right? Socially awkward. However, that's not really the case. He does or is socially awkward, yes, but he does make an attempt to go out and go places. This is Zach Cartwright. He met Kohberger at a swimming pool party. And so this was in the summer of 2022. And this is in the Moscow area where he met him. And, in my opinion, if this guy's going out to a pool parties usually don't have as much clothing. I would feel that somebody who has a problem being around social settings, that a pool party would probably be one of the top of your more uncomfortable settings. Is Kohberger still one of those type of guys? If he's that socially awkward, is he going to be at a pool party, right? But regardless of that, the fact that he's at a party, is it possible that he went to other parties? Is it possible that he went to a party at 1122 King Road? Now, we've all seen the body cam footage of how many people were at that residence on different occasions for parties. It's been reported that up to 150 people were there. Is it possible that Bryan Kohberger made his way into one of these parties and perhaps lost or had his knife stolen or forgot his knife at one occasion? Possible. But let's just say that's not his defense. Is there another possible defense for the DNA? Well, let's look at Howard Bloom, who is the author, journalist in the Airmail articles that were released earlier this year. He's out there in Moscow, Idaho. He's a guy that has talked to police, well informed. Let's hear what he has to say when he references the DNA on the sheath. And this is off the Megyn Kelly show.
Well, they had the knife sheath, but they didn't know what was on it. They sent it first to the lab in Idaho, and the lab in Idaho couldn't find anything. So they thought this might be a dead end. What they did do, it seems that Idaho had a contract that was set up 6 months earlier with a startup in Texas. Some Silicon Valley guys had put together several $1,000,000 to build this lab in Woodlands, Texas. Set up this new company that was really going to just look into cold cases, DNA that had not been considered before. Idaho sends this down to Woodlands, Texas, to this lab, which is funded by these Silicon Valley tech people, venture capitalists, and that makes the connection. However, that connection is not made for no.
So it took, they sent the DNA, the sheath to the forensic lab at the Moscow Police Department, and their forensic lab couldn't come up with something there. It wasn't until it was sent to a different lab. I mean, there's a lot of hands that object is touching and going through. I understand it's probably well encased, things like that. But the defense is going to argue, is it possible that it was contaminated in some way, shape, or form? Are you gonna trust the findings after the first one from the forensic lab by the police department indicated there was nothing there? To me, it's not a small thing. It's a big thing. You guys let me know in the comment section what you guys think about that. And also, by the way, if you guys can hit that like button, if you're not subscribed, subscribe and ring that notification bell. We appreciate that. The next thing that's a big piece of evidence against him is going to be the car, right? He drives a white car without the front license plate. You're looking at, well, let's first and foremost, let's talk about what Moscow Police Department put out, that there was somewhere about 20,000 vehicles in the area that would match the description of that vehicle. And so he's not driving some kind of exotic vehicle that is uncommon. It's a very common car, especially in the college community. However, the prosecution is going to tell us, well, you also have to partner that up with the fact that he was out that night. Now, the prosecution was going to come up forward and say that they have phone pings and surveillance of him in an area, and that proves and indicates that he was operating in and about the area during the commission of the crime, or leading up to the crime and afterwards, and that he is responsible. Well, let's look at that evidence real quick. So this right here from the affidavit says that investigators were given access to video footage from on the Washington State University WSU campus located on Pullman, Washington. A review of that video indicated approximately 2:44 a.m. on November 13, a white sedan, which was consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as suspect vehicle 1. Now, suspect vehicle number 1 was the vehicle that was spotted out and around the 1122 King Road Ranch, or King Road. Sorry about that. King Drive Road. Now, and then at approximately 2:53, that vehicle leaves heading towards SR 270, which connects Pullman to Moscow, right? So this is at 2:44. He's hanging out there for approximately 9 minutes before heading out. Well, if we look at the phone pings, which you can't pick and choose and cherry pick your evidence as to which one's accurate or not, right? This says here at approximately 2:42 a.m., the phone belonging to Kohberger was at his residence at 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment G201. Hereafter, the Kohberger residence. At approximately 2:47, the phone is using cellular resource to provide coverage southeast of Kohberger's residence, consistent with that phone leaving the residence and traveling southbound. And I got a little bit of an issue with that, because let's just say if we take the 2:47 out as that being the time that they see him heading southbound, right? Or that they notice him going southbound, and just focus on the fact that at 2:42, he was still at his residence. Well, here's a map from the Steptoe Apartments to Southeast Nevada Street there in Pullman. Steptoe Apartments being Bryan Kohberger's address. It's about 1.6 miles away. And that's going through residential areas, stoplights, stop signs, things of that nature. So the prosecution is going to want us to believe that he was at his residence, leaving his residence at 2:42, and then coming to this area on Nevada Street, 1.6 miles away. Well, he would have had to have been operating his vehicle at 48, 50 miles an hour, uninterrupted, unstopped, pretty big stretch, or is it possible that out of these 20,000 vehicles that are in the area that match the description of Kohberger's vehicle, that there was 2 of them out and about at the same time? That's up to you to decide. When it comes to the phone pings alone, they aren't very accurate. Even the probable cause affidavit, talks about it. It says investigators found that the 8458 phone did connect to a cell phone tower that provides service to Moscow on November 14th, 2022, but investigators do not believe that the 8458 phone was in Moscow on that date. The 8458 phone has not connected to any towers to provide service to Moscow since that date. So what they're saying is that it connected at least one time when they knew for a fact that he wasn't there. And to their knowledge, the phone hasn't connected to a tower in Moscow. Doesn't necessarily mean that he wasn't there, but they don't believe the phone was on while it was there, or the phone hasn't gone back. So for one, a lot of folks thinking that Bryan Kohberger was driving around a lot, passing by. Well, if they did see a white Elantra or white vehicles in the background of somebody revisiting the crime, it wasn't Kohberger. Somebody else driving a vehicle of a similar description, driving around in the background, revisiting the crime scene, and it wasn't him. So who was it? How did they even come across to getting the phone pings to begin with? Based on what we found last time was an investigation into his background on his studies. I'm not sure that makes you, a person of interest in a crime just because he's a criminologist with a psychology added to it. I'm not sure if it's a major or a minor, but he's got his PhD. He's going for his PhD. They used a witness statement based on his height and weight and bushy eyebrows. Somebody who was, the witness is probably going to be thrown through the mud in this situation. They're going to talk about why she didn't call anybody for 9 hours, 8 hours, that she saw this person, made phone calls to other people in the house, made calls to other people outside of the house the next morning prior to calling 911. And even once somebody else had arrived, it was somebody else that called 911 off their phone. So how reliable is that evidence going to be? And you're also going to be looking at character witnesses too, right? So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to come forward talking about how Bryan Kohberger was, this way or that way, socially awkward, the whole 9 yards, did, consume narcotics at a younger age. But I think the defense is also going to bring their own character witnesses. One of them that they're going to bring in, they're going to bring their own character witnesses as well. And one of them that they're going to be bringing in are going to be the folks at the hospital, at the appointment that he maintained. Now, they're not just going to bring him just based on character. They're going to say that, they're going to ask him about his character and how he acted there. And they're going to talk about how they were smitten and they felt, in their words, charmed by Bryan Kohberger. This is an appointment that he maintained 4 days after, the assault that he's alleged to have committed. And so, I think his defense team is going to look at this and say, how likely is somebody to have maintained and kept an appointment like this, a physical, at a doctor's office after brutally committing the crime that he did 4 days earlier? I think that when it comes to the evidence, like I mentioned before, it's going to come down to what's found in the vehicle. Because up to this point, the evidence that they currently have, I find to be a little bit, there can be some explanations. But before we get on to the second part, which is who we think they're going to be pointing the finger towards, we got a word from our sponsors. Power up for springtime with America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Get nutritious, chef-prepared meals delivered straight to your door, leaving you time and energy to tackle everything on your to-do list without a hassle. Factor 75.
There's a great choice for me working in the medical field overnight. It helps me avoid that morning trip to the grocery store and skip the chopping, prepping, and cleaning up. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready to go in just 2 minutes. Just put in the microwave and go.
After running around in the woods all day searching for Bigfoot, nothing fills me up and makes me feel better than one of the 34 chef-prepared, dietitian-approved weekly options, there's always something new to try. Factor 75.
So head on over to factor75.com or click the link below and use code DrunkTurkeyShow50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Again, head over to factor75.com. Yeah, that stuff's pretty good, man. They sent us over a couple of samples, and me and the guys, and we really, really enjoyed it. You won't be disappointed. Link is in the description. So the second part of the show is going to be probably what, in my opinion, the most important part of a defense is that you're going to find somebody else perhaps could have committed the crime. That way, bringing up reasonable doubt. You know, at the end of the day, Kohberger does not have to prove he's innocent, doesn't have to prove the guilt of somebody else. He just has to bring up enough questions that brings up reasonable doubt in one of those jurors' minds, right? Before I move forward, I do want to say that we aren't, pointing the finger ourselves at anybody. We're just looking at the information that we have and what's been portrayed in front of us and putting out there what we could expect to see out of this defense team. I honestly think this is going to be a high probability of what we'll be seeing from the defense team. But again, we think that Bryan Kohberger is the guy. However, this is something that we feel that you might see. Now, I think that we may have had a little bit of a sneak peek as to what Bryan Kohberger's defense is going to be going, into this case, and it came from his neighbor.
Right here, he said, "Have you heard about these murders?" And I was like, yeah, because it just happened. Like there was like a few articles. There was not much detail on it at all. So when he said that, I was like, yeah, I read like an article. There's not much about it. He's like, yeah, it seems like they don't have any leads. And I was like, yeah, I guess not. And he's like, yeah, they think it's a crime of passion.
So, crime of passion. I think that's going to be the narrative that they're going to go in. Right now, I think everybody has been aware or is aware of or knows the formula of a crime, where you have means plus opportunity plus motive equals crime. I'm sure everybody's heard of that. Now, the means aspect of it is, is this person capable of committing this crime? Are they strong enough? Do they have? Are they capable of committing a crime? Opportunity is obviously if they have the moment, if somebody has an alibi or something like that and they're far away, then they don't have that opportunity. And then motive. Now, when it comes to Bryan Kohberger, I think there's the means, the opportunity. Motive is a bit of a question, right? A lot of folks look at it saying he's an incel, saying that he was turned down, saying that maybe he was planning this was a project, this was, he was a copycat of other, individuals that he studied in his studies. Nobody really knows what the motive is, if there's one at all, right? Now, you don't necessarily need a motive for a crime. It does help. It helps out a jury a lot. But if you have somebody else that you can look at and they fit all three of these scenarios, I think that brings up a question of reasonable doubt when you look at Bryan Kohberger. And I think that the person that they're going to be looking at, or the direction they're going to be looking at, is none other than Jack DeCoeur, Kaylee's ex-boyfriend. And there's a few reasons why, and we'll go through them. One, first and foremost, let's talk about the means. Is Jack DeCoeur capable of committing this crime? Yeah. He is strong. He's athletic. There's videos of him juggling, doing all sorts of things, tennis. Does he fit the description of what Dylan, of the person she said that Dylan said she saw? Now, I agree. And Dylan saw just the eyes of Jack DeCoeur, somebody that I would assume that she was familiar with, but maybe not. Who knows how long Dylan was on that lease? It'd only been a few weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks since the school had started. So it's not like she was there a very long time. It's not like she knew these girls for a very long time, but we can assume that she knew Jack DeCoeur, and we would assume that she would have recognized him, even if all she saw were his eyes and his eyebrows. But the defense is going to come at and say, Jack DeCoeur is above 5'10", has bushy eyebrows. He's a bigger guy. He's not so much muscular, but is athletic. It's just very similar description to what Dylan Mortenson had described seeing. Now let's talk about the opportunity. Now, the prosecution wants us to believe that Bryan Kohberger planned this out in detail, great detail, and that he had doctor's appointments set up, barber appointments set up afterwards. That way, he can do things that would throw law enforcement off their track, right? But how did he know or plan for the fact that Kaylee wasn't there for a week and a half prior to the incident? So she had just shown up on Friday. Now, she had just purchased the vehicle and she was trying to show off that vehicle to her best friend Madison. So she hadn't put up any post on social media about the Range Rover she had just purchased. She had been there Friday and was planning to be out of there before Tuesday. She was only there for like 3 days, and Bryan Kohberger somehow planned this well in advance and knew about it.
Kaylee was home, had just been home, so we are so thankful that she had just been home for a week and a half. She just bought a brand new vehicle for herself, her first vehicle. She had planned a trip. She was planning on backpacking across Europe for the month of January, starting her new job in February with this internship that she had done, wound up offering her a full-time, very well-paid position that she was very excited to take. And she was with us for the last week and a half. She went home Friday to literally go show off her new vehicle. She was like, Maddie has to see my new ride, and said, I'm not going to tell you. You're just going to see me pull up and wait till you see what I pull up in. Kaylee called me on Saturday and said, Mom, I'll be home on Tuesday, and I'm going to take you out to breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it's all on me, and we'll celebrate your birthday. She
wasn't gone. She wasn't there. How could Bryan Kohberger have known of this, right? How does that make sense? How would he have known? Right now, she had a new car. Let's say he was stalking the area for the couple weeks prior to the incident. She was gone for a week and a half prior to. She got a new vehicle. That seems pretty risky to pull up to see a couple vehicles in the driveway, including a brand new Range Rover. I don't know. How does he know that that's who she is? Now, who knew she was in town? It's a big question, right?
In that scene, it was just they were around him. Not this Jack's over here in the corner. No, she was around her ex.
She was around her ex. This is the night of the incident, November 12th. The early hours, late evening, November 12th, early hours, November 13th. That is, according to Steve Goncalves there, that is Jack DeCore that she is with. Right? So Jack knew she was in town. Jack was with her. Bryan Kohberger, did he know? Apparently not. This is from the Corner Club. Suspect was not or has not been here, nor was removed from the bar the evening of the incident. Stop calling us.
Talked to him about the conversation that night. We've talked to the other guy about the conversation that went on that night, and they both, they were just like, hey, what's been up? How you been doing? What's been going on? And she was trying to talk him into going to another bar down the street or something like that. And he's like, I worked all day. I'm tired. I'm going home. And he left and went home. And, we think things could have been different.
We questioned the time in that video. We're not sure.
Of course, they question the timestamp because it says 1:32 and it doesn't make sense at the time that they had left. And there's video footage of them heading towards the grub truck video. And there's also video of them at the grub truck video and text messages that they've seen that don't align with them being there at the Corner Club still at 1:32. Right. So they think that perhaps, the week prior to that, November 6th, the weekend of November 6th, was daylight savings time. And so there's a possibility that they didn't turn back the time on their clocks and it was an hour early, and that could have been at 12:32. But what she's saying is that Jack was tired, he had worked all day and wanted to go home. That is what we're to believe, correct? All right, so everybody remembers this situation right here with Adam, right?
We went and investigated Adam. What did you tell Adam? We went through that whole thing. Adam is about her trying to get back with Jack.
We know that Adam is the bartender at the corner club, right? And we know that Kaylee broke up with Jack, right? And we're to believe that the conversation that they're having outside is because Kaylee is wanting to get back with Jack, the person that was broken up with, right? So usually when there's a breakup, the person that gets broken up with is usually the one fighting to get back, or like, hey, take me back. What did I do wrong? Things like that, right? It's not usually the person doing the breaking up that wants the person back, right? Let's look at the Adam conversation, listen to it real quick, and you guys tell me if it sounds like, something that is just them getting back together, or if it sounds a little bit different.
What did you say to Adam? I told Adam everything.
Yeah, we've all heard it before. Maddie, what did you say to Adam? Like I told Adam everything. That doesn't really sound or jive with me, to be honest with you guys, when it comes to that story. Now let's look at what's going on right here, right? You have the corner club, and this is where that footage is taken. Is approximately, well, let's measure it out real quick. I know I've done this before, but let's do it one more time. From the corner club to where that footage is taken is about 180 feet. All right, it's 180 feet. So whatever Maddie told Adam got back to Kaylee from the time that she left this bar 180 feet away. How long is that? Maybe a minute, maybe 2 minutes from the time that she left. Now, we also know that Jack left early, right? Because he was tired. We can assume that based on everything that we heard right now from Steve, that if it was about Jack and her getting back together, then that person that reached out to her about whatever Adam said was Jack. So he was still awake at that time. So right here, she's on her phone the entire time. Let me speed this up so we're watching it. We don't have to. So this is sped up. She is on her phone the entire time, not paying attention to anybody else. Friends come over. In fact, somebody's going to come up to her. She's not even going to realize that somebody came up to her until they hug her. She doesn't even realize at this point that Maddie left her and that she's by herself, just completely on the phone. And there it is. There's her friend, comes up to hug her, doesn't know. Has her friends around her, has people that she know around her, but yet she's constantly on her phone. Who do you think she's texting at that moment? That is, what conversation at 2 o'clock in the morning or 1:45 in the morning is so important? Jack supposedly left because he was tired. He was tired, remember? She's still on the phone. Let's fast forward this. She's still on the phone when I just jump up. Look at everybody around her's gone. Still on the phone. Now, I'm not saying anything, but if any of you guys, male or female, been in a toxic relationship, does that look familiar to you? Like I said, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but that night she was on the phone quite a bit with somebody, up until what time? Till she got home, and then once she tried to call Jack, he stopped answering the phone. Is that right? And this is the motive. Why would he do this? Why would Jack do that? So he had the opportunity. He knew she was in town. He knew when she went home. He knew a lot of things, right? Did Bryan Kohberger know those things? I don't know. Maybe he was stalking her. But he wasn't at the corner club. Wasn't at the grub truck video. Wasn't on her phone at that time. Let's look at this. This says here, a newspaper quoted by Kaylee's sister saying the couple had recently broken up. Also, a student at the University of Idaho did not answer because he was sleeping. And the girls did not call anyone else at the time. He was asleep.
Maddie wouldn't answer. I said, no, this can't be, because Maddie would have called me. If Kaylee was shot last night at a party, Maddie or Jack would have called me. Like, no, and I called Kaylee and went straight to voicemail. I was calling Maddie, it was calling Jack, it was ringing. I turned on the TV and I saw it was like 11:22 Queen Road. Like, Kaylee's car was in the driveway, Maddie's car was in the driveway.
So Jack goes home because he's tired at 12. He's not answering his phone at 2:30 because we believe he fell asleep. He doesn't answer the phone the next day in the morning when the Goncalves family starts calling him. Now, what time do we think that he was getting called? Now, they talked about the news team was out there. In the beginning, somebody had called him and told him that it was a shooting, not a stabbing. And so they were a little bit off when it came to that aspect, as far as the family. And that's why she said shot. But they immediately called Jack and he didn't answer. If the media was out there, we know that the 911 call wasn't until noon. Media is probably making their way out there. From where? Is Moscow and Pullman, Washington big enough to have large coverage of media across? Or is somebody coming in from, an hour away, 30 minutes away, 40 minutes away from a larger city in the nearby area that has these news coverage? So let's just say anywhere between 12:30 and 1:30 is when the media is out there. How much does Jack DeCour sleep? And how many calls does he miss during that time during a crazy incident? It's not just Kohberger's phone. That's a question, my opinion.
He was looking for every excuse for him to pick the phone up.
Yes.
To read those texts.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
She
I will
wanted
leave
him to
tonight
know.
with the dog if you don't pick up. That type of thing.
I'll leave tonight with the dog, that type of thing. She was trying to get a hold of him, trying to get him to answer the phone, but he didn't want to. Does that sound like somebody who got broken up with? Or does that sound like somebody that did the breaking up with? You know what I'm saying? Why wouldn't he want to get back with her if he wasn't the one that broke up with her?
Kaylee's boyfriend for many years. They just recently broke up. There was no animosity at all. It was a breakup on Kaylee's point. It was not, they still talked every single day. Kaylee just thought that she needed a little break. They were on the mend of getting back together. Kaylee talked to Jack the whole time she was here for that week and a half.
One of her last messages, she reached out to Jack and said, Jack, get back to me. And he didn't. She goes, we share a dog together, which they did. She's like, you need to reach out to me. So
please come over. She was wanting Jack to come over. Jack is hurting. And Kaylee and Jack would have eventually been married. They would have eventually been married and they would have eventually had children together. So to say ex-boyfriend, it was Kaylee just being a brat, being like, I just need a break.
Whether they were, I think they were close to getting back together. Maybe they weren't, maybe they were. Whether she was moving without him or not, he had nothing but love.
So we all know that earlier it stated that Kaylee was leaving. She was going to Texas. This is a post from Facebook of her looking for a roommate in the Austin area, that she was going to be there from February to June. Maybe another reason.
Said things I shouldn't say. My daughter broke up with him, and within a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, she had an interaction with a date. And she said, call me a bitch. And she was like, I've been with one boy my whole life.
So within a week of her and Jack splitting up, she goes on a date. Now, there's a couple of things that I have a question about with that. If they're splitting up because she's moving away and it's something that they both agree upon, right? And it's her reason to break up with Jack because she's leaving and she's got all these plans. Why is she going on a date with somebody, right? Especially so close to her leaving, and, it didn't sound like she was going to be gone long, till from February to June. Like, you're going to leave a 6-year relationship because you can't be next to the person, that you're in a relationship with for 4 months. Sounds kind of weird, right? There's visits. There's a lot of things that can be done during that time. Her going on a date with somebody so soon after, we saw these signs. I asked the question, like, does that sound normal? You got a girl who's only, according to them, she's only been with one guy, right? They just said, I've only been with one boy. He's never called me this, right? Because the guy that she went on a date, disrespected her. She goes on a date with this guy within 1 week. This is the guy that probably her first love, the whole 9 yards, right? And we're to expect to believe that, 1 week later, week and a half later, she's on a date with somebody else. It sounds kind of far-fetched. I find it hard to believe that she would be so easy to move on that quickly. Unless the relationship, although maybe not officially over, had been over for some time. There could have been a situation where a daughter wouldn't speak to her parents about certain things in her relationship. Well, we can look at another case, for instance, the Alex Murdaugh case. Paul Murdaugh, his girlfriends or ex-girlfriend's family were unaware of how Paul Murdaugh treated their daughter. I'm not saying that's the case here or at all, but I think the defense is going to try to push that out there. Let's continue watching.
And I said, he's never called you. And she's like, never. And I said, really? And she goes, never. And he said, you could go make me a quesadilla. And she said, what did you say? And she said, I'm leaving. And she goes, and I left. And I went home and I called Jack.
She went home and called Jack. So Jack was aware of the date. Is this the reason why maybe perhaps he didn't want to get back with her? Because she dumped him and then began dating so soon after? That makes a little bit of sense. Could it also be a reason for somebody to be angry, be upset, give you a motive?
Day one of this all happening, Jack was right there in the trenches with me, reaching out to people Kaylee had called. Who is this?
The first 3 nights are on our couch after he came. He could not leave us.
That's why the FBI agent said, Steve, slow down.
Immediately after the incident, which, I'm not blaming him for doing this. If I was in the same shoes, I'd probably do the same. But the defense is going to look at the fact that the first thing that he did was go and try to make contact with people that Kaylee was talking to see what they knew. That can be perceived in one or two different ways. The defense is going to try to make it seem like it'd be similar to a person that commits a crime and there's a person missing and they go and join the search team. They're going to look at it in that manner. They're also going to look at him possibly trying to dig for information about what she may have told other people about him. Those are all things that the defense are going to bring up. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this video. Let me know if at all that this, if the defense comes in with this type of evidence or with this type of evidence being out there, does that leave you with a little bit of reasonable doubt? Do you question anything? Let us know in the comment section. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring that notification bell. With that being said, I'm Daniel J. This is the Drunk Turkey Show. We'll see you again tomorrow night.